Hey guys, today I will show you how you can read or write text files using Java new input-output API. So let's get started. Okay, let's start with reading files. Here I will show you two cases. The first case will be used for reading smaller text files, and the second case will be used for reading very large text files. So let's first create a function for reading smaller text files. First, we need to get a path to our text file, so let's first create it. So go to any directory you want, and then create new text document, and name it, for example, small file, and then open it, and write, for example, this is small file. Close it, and then select Properties, go to Security tab, and then copy this object name, which is basically a path to this file, and then paste this path to your code. Now let's create a path object from this path. So let's type path equals paths get, and here you can just paste your absolute path to your file. So let's do this, and then let's organize imports. If you are using IDE for programming, you will see that all single backslashes were actually replaced with double backslashes, and that's because in Java you cannot use only one backslash inside strings, because this means escape sequence. As you can see here, we get an error, invalid escape sequence, if we only use one, so we have to use double backslashes. Okay, now let's read from this file, and for smaller files this is basically very simple. All you have to do is to use Files class and then call readAllLines function, which takes a path as a parameter, and this function returns a list of strings. So let's create list of strings and call it lines. Okay, let's organize imports, and then let's rethrow the exception that this function can throw. Okay, and now let's use a for loop so we can print each line. So let's type for each line in lines, just output line, and then let's call this function inside main, and then let's run this program, and you can see the output. Please note that this function readAllLines actually reads the whole content of text file inside Java memory. So if we would use the same function for reading very large text files, we could actually cause an out-of-memory error. So in this case, we have to use another approach, which I will show you now. So let's create a new file and new function as we did for the first case. Okay, as you can see, we have created a path to this big file, the same as we did for the small file, but here we will be using a buffered reader. This is also very simple when using Files class, so all you have to do is to create buffered reader, and let's name it, for example, reader, and then you just call files and then new buffered reader, which also takes a path as a parameter. Now let's put this reader inside try with resources statement, so it can be automatically closed when finished reading. Now let's print all lines, but here we will be using a while loop instead of for loop. So let's first create a string for storing current line, for example like this, and then let's call while, and then here we will call line equals reader read line, and while this is not null, we will just print this line, like so. This means that when a reader will reach the end of the file, then read line will return null, and in this case we will break out of this loop. Okay, and now let's test it. So let's run this, and you can see the output. So just a quick recap. If you want to read from smaller text files, then use readAllLines from Files class. But if you want to read from bigger text files, then use newBufferedReader from Files class. Now let me also show you how you can write to text files. As you can see, I have prepared a new function for writing to small text file with the same path as we used for reading. For writing text to your text file, you should use Files class as we did before, but this time you should call WriteString function, which takes a path to your file and a string you want to write. For example, new line. So this function will open this file and then write this string to it, but if this file does not exist yet, it will be automatically created. Let me show you an example. So if I go to my Files folder, you can see that small file is already present. So if I execute this code and then go back, you can see that new line was written. But if I now delete this file and then execute the code again, you can see that this new file was automatically created. This function overrides the existing file content by default, so if you want to only append some text to your text file, then you should use third parameter to this function, which is open option parameter, and you can just type standard open option and then append. If I now run this function and then show you the file, you can see that this new line was appended to the previous new line. You can see that this string is not actually in new line, and that's because we didn't use a new line character when we were writing to this file. So let me also show you this. So let's delete this and then let's close this. Then go back to our code and let's add new line character. And I will execute now 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And go back. And now you can see 3 lines. Please note that this function should not be used for writing large amount of text to text files, because we can also run into some memory issues, and in this case we have to use another approach. So let's write a new function. As you remember, we have used buffered reader for reading big text files, and for writing we will use, yes, you guessed it, buffered writer. The code is very similar, so let's take this code where we created a new buffered reader and let's paste it, and then let's change the buffered reader to writer and let's rename it. And here we will not call a new buffered reader, but we will call a new buffered writer, like so. Now all we have to do is to call a write function on this writer. So let's type writer.write and then our text that we want to write, for example, new line. Now if I run the program and then go to our big file, you can see that new line was written. Here we have the same situation as before, so all of the file contents were overwritten. So if you only want to append a text, you have to use a flag on your buffered writer. So let me show you this. So here, when we are creating new buffered writer, you just specify another flag, standard open option, append, the same as before. And then let's also add new line character. And let's execute it 3 times. And then go back. And you can see that 3 new lines are written. Please note that we have called this write function only once in our example, but in real life you would call this function inside some for or while loop, and this could execute a very large number of times. So remember, if you want to write a smaller amount of text to text file, then use WriteString function on Files class, but if you want to write larger amount, then use BufferedWriter. And by the way, I will also publish this code on my GitHub repository, so please don't forget to check it out. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. Also, if you found this video valuable, please subscribe to my channel. I'll see you in the next one.